Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, that was wonderful for Saturday. My name is Shelley Stern-Grach, and I am with Microsoft. And on behalf of United Way, Microsoft, and Chicago Public Schools, I want to thank everyone for joining us on this spectacular October fall morning. As part of Chicago Ideas Week, we are very excited at Microsoft to help host this town hall, celebrating everyday education heroes, the people you see in front of you. And our goal today is to unearth those ideas where we can really make a difference in education. This morning we'll hear from several local heroes, and we also hope to hear from you, the people in the audience. This is a town hall, so we do want interaction. And it is being webcasted live. Don't let that bother you. And so we're looking forward to have our audience members participate from the comfort of their own homes. And we're looking for all of you to help share your ideas, your stories, your thoughts. For those of you watching from home, please send in your questions, and we will funnel those to our moderator. And again, we look forward to also hearing from the people in the audience. We all know and love our moderator who's with us this morning, Soledad O'Brien, who's an anchor with CNN. In just a few minutes, she'll help us get to know our panel members and also talk with them about their ideas to help improve education. But before I introduce Soledad, I just want to take a minute to share with you Microsoft's role today in this town hall. At Microsoft, we are committed to education, and our commitment is in several ways. We bring innovative tools, programs, and practices to help students and educators and parents realize their full potential. We want to help teachers and students integrate technology into the classroom in creative ways to make teaching and learning even more rewarding. But we know that to do that, it takes a lot of collaboration. And that's why we are so proud and grateful to be partnering with the United Way. United Way has the expertise and the knowledge to work with us and my team to help us know where to put our resources to best use. So we truly, truly appreciate that partnership. Like United Way, Microsoft believes that an educated, competitive workforce is what makes Chicago great. A great place not only to work and live, but a great place for business. And as I look at the parents out there, I know you're all focused on making sure that your children get the best education possible so they can get great jobs and become successful members of society. But if you look at our country's statistics, more and more jobs are being outsourced, and less American students are graduating from high school. In some parts of our region, less than half of our students are actually graduating. And this is an epidemic that we cannot allow to continue. But we can change this by working together, by hosting programs like this, by creating the dialogue, by getting best practices from innovative heroes. We know there's an unstoppable power in all the connections that result when we all work together for common goals. So I'd like to take a moment now and introduce a very special guest and a new friend of mine who's in the audience with us today. In August, Chicago Public Schools CEO Jean-Claude Brizard named Jamiko Rose as Chief Family and Community Engagement Officer. Jamiko is responsible for working with parents and community groups just like this on engagement and external partnerships with the CPS system. So I'd like to ask Jamiko to stand and introduce herself to the audience. Jamiko? And what Jamiko's holding up is you should be having, or you will get, audience question participation notes. Do you all have that? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so it's just a gentle reminder for all of you to use it. Jamiko's fabulous. Don't mob her until after the show. And we're so thrilled to have you with us this morning. I'd now like to turn my comments to a wonderful person who has given generously of her time and effort. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Soledad O'Brien. Soledad O'Brien is an anchor and special correspondent for CNN US. Since joining the network in 2003, she has reported breaking news from around the globe and has produced award-winning, record-breaking, and critically acclaimed documentaries on the most important stories and issues facing the world today. Soledad's most recent documentary was entitled Don't Fail Me, Education in America, and it gives us a look at the crisis in public education where our children are not always given the opportunity to learn the skills they need to compete in this global society. Recently, Soledad and her husband started the Soledad O'Brien and Brad Raymond Family Foundation. This foundation exists to help young women get access to education, which I know we all support. After traveling the world, Soledad met incredible people, mostly young people, who just needed a little bit extra help to make earning their diplomas or their degrees a little easier. From daycare to financial scholarships, Soledad's foundation focuses on helping students across the country. And it's now my pleasure to welcome our moderator this morning, Soledad O'Brien.
Thank you for that kind introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here. I've been working as a journalist for now going on 25 years. And every time I say that, it's like, well, I got to start lying about that. That sounds like a lot. And I think it's fair, in the last couple of years, we've really seen conversations, fierce debate at times, sometimes just out and out shouting about education is happening. It's probably at an all-time high. And I think that's why you're here at this town hall. Sometimes we're frustrated with the way the system is working, or maybe not working. And I think that we all want solutions. And I ultimately think that second part is what's going to save us, not only locally, but as a nation, which is there are not very many issues in which people really ultimately want the same thing. Everybody kind of wants the same end result, right? People want students to be academically successful. People want students to be competitive on a global platform, right? We all actually have the same end goal, which gives me great hope, because often we don't all want the same thing. But on this one, we're all kind of going for the same thing. And I think that is an incredibly good and important thing when we talk about education. The documentary that you were talking about, Don't Fail Me, took a look at high schoolers across the country and STEM education specifically. We had a young woman named Maria who was from Phoenix, Arizona, who was living in poverty, a Latina. A guy named Brian, a high school senior, who was a white kid from suburban Tennessee. And a young man named Sean, who is Asian Indian and from a wealthy New Jersey suburb. And we told the story of these three kids as they all tried to compete in a robotics competition, which is called FIRST. So we told it from each kid sort of coming in as they made it or got disqualified from the competition. What we were really doing, though, was not just telling their story. We were trying to examine the impact that socioeconomic class, that race, that ethnicity, that gender, that geographic location, all those things actually have on your opportunity when it comes to education. And the takeaway, of course, is that obstacles are higher for some kids. The obstacles are tougher. But the beauty of America, and I say this as a first-generation American whose parents came to this country for education, is that this is a land of possibility. And if you can leverage it, you might have to fight for it, but if you can leverage it the right way, you can literally move a family, a person, from here in poverty to here in one generation. That is a very, very big deal. That is unique to this country, I believe. So, people often talk about blame, blame, blame. I know, because I think journalists stir the pot on that all the time. And they say, well, the teachers are terrible, and the administrators, well, they just won't give money, and the students, they're lazy, and the parents, they're uninvolved, and everybody's pointing fingers, and usually there's shouting and what we call the double box, lots of angry voices. So today what I really want to do is talk about solutions. We'll frame some of the big challenges, but really what has worked? What was the magic? What was the pressure that eventually worked? And so with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists. So we'll start with Barbara Mason. She is the superintendent of District 159, which is a suburban school district. It's located in the south suburbs of Chicago, and it's a relatively small district, right? 5 schools, you were saying. She arrived at District 159 11 years ago, though she's been an educator for more than 30 years, as a teaching assistant, teacher, principal, university instructor, so she's kind of seen it and done it all. Served for 6 years as the deputy superintendent for curriculum and instruction before she moved on to superintendent of schools. A little bit about District 159, 5 schools, pre-K through 8, with a student population of roughly 2,000. 90% of the population is African American, 62% designated as low income. Since 2003, they've seen improvement in academic progress, and the latest reporting results from the state showed that more than 80% of the students were meeting or exceeding state learning standards. Thank you for being with us. We certainly appreciate it. Matthew Ginnick is with us as well. He is a father of 5. He was born and raised and lives in Chicago. He attended a Catholic school K through 10, and then the Chicago public school system 11 through 12. Attended both community and private college. His 3 girls, I think, yep, here they are, right there in the front, are with us today, and his wife Maria as well. They all attend the Namaste Charter School in Chicago, and he's an active member of the school and also on the PTO. So thanks for coming, we appreciate it. Brianna McCormick is a senior at the Young Women's Leadership Charter School. She lives in Chicago's South Side. She's a high school senior, as I said. Interested in engineering and training in the robotics building. She describes herself as a visionary, likes to think outside the box and toward the future, which will be very helpful in our conversations today. She's on the end there, by the way. And wants to talk about sort of the potential modern-day uses of technology. She looks forward to attending the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and then wants to start her own engineering firm in New York City. So it's nice to have you. And Michelle Cooney, I have you last on my list, which is why I skipped over you. She's the director of literacy at a magnet Montessori school in the Chicago Public Schools, and a mother of 2 as well. She lives in Chicago. Spent the past 12 and a half years teaching and leading in a variety of settings: neighborhood school on the South Side, University of Chicago Charter School, magnet school on the West Side. She's taught grades 2 through 6, has coached teachers on their practice, and led professional development on literacy instruction for teachers pre-K through 6. And she says she commits her life work to the intellectual work of teaching and leading in the urban school. So that is our panel, and with that I will take my seat and we will begin our conversation. Thank you. You can clap for them. Let's begin by letting everybody, and I've given a little blurb from your resumes, but I want you to give us perspective for this conversation. Barbara, we'll start with you, and we'll really just go down the list. Tell me a little bit about what you think are the biggest challenges today in education from your perspective. What has been the toughest thing for you?
I think the toughest thing is that the commitment that really was not a part of the commitment in previous years, that we're educating every single child to the best of their ability. And for me, that greatest challenge is the challenge of to dispel the myth, I think, of the achievement gap. That I believe that if we have the resources and the time, every child can achieve and they must achieve in order to be prepared for the 21st century and life as we are leading it today.
What do you think, Matthew?
What was the question? No.
This is what we call a hostile interview. When a guest comes out, it's like, I can go there. I am happy to do that.
That's when you gave him that 5 children.
I'm still trying to recover from the 5 children. It's 3.
What did I say, 5 children?
Yeah, I think so.
3 sometimes feels like 5.
It does.
3, 5, it's just a lot.
As a parent, and if I may, actually, I didn't realize we were going to be referred to as heroes. I'm not, by the people I'm surrounded by, I'm in good company, but I don't consider myself a hero as much as I do maybe involved parents. My wife and I, we take an active role in our children's education, and unfortunately that's not always the case. Every family dynamic is different. The fact that my wife's parents put a pretty high priority on education. My family also did, and we came together, and before we even had children, we talked about it. And so staying involved and figuring out, again, not just how things are working today, but how things are progressing, and what, kind of like thinking outside the box is ultimately what the school we're involved in does, and we're glad to be part of that.
I think for me, being a part of the schools for years gave me a little bit more of a lens of what I wanted for my own children. I've seen one school that I was a part of for a few years that didn't work beautifully, and now I'm in my second school, and both of the last 2 schools have worked very well for children. They've both been wonderful places for children to be and for parents to be involved with. So I think navigating this process of looking for a school that would work well for my son, and I really strongly believe in putting my children in public schools, but it's not always the easiest process to go through when you're in a big city. So it worked well. I mean, he's in a wonderful place. I've I'm now in a position where I'm in the same school as him, which is a gift. But I think there is a challenge in finding an environment that's right for your child when you're in such a big system and you are committed to the public schools.
Brianna.
Well, I'm kind of coming into this discussion as a student, so I have a different perspective. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face as students is staying encouraged and motivated in the classroom. I think, we need more teachers to really get students involved. So they come to school and say, hey, I want to go to that class, I want to learn, I want to get this, I want to do that. We push the factor of success, but we have to lay the bricks for the foundation first. And I think that that is super important, and sometimes we struggle as a school system overall implementing that.
What do you think went right? I mean, clearly, if you were looking to open your own engineering firm in New York City soon, something went very right from the building blocks, to the foundation, to the actual structure of your education, if you will. What was done well every step of the way that made it work for you?
I always felt encouraged to succeed, to go.
By everyone?
I would say yes, all of my teachers in grammar school and in high school. Grammar school, I had support, and then when I got to high school, I had more support. So I felt when I walked into a classroom that my teacher wanted me to learn. My teacher wanted this, and they were able to help me. So if there were, issues with understanding concepts or whatever the case may be, they were always there to help. And I think that really made me motivate myself, because I felt like, hey, there is a place for me inside of education. All I need to do now is make sure it happens. So all I had to do was set the plan and follow it. And that really helped me. I don't think there's ever been a day in my educational career where I felt, they don't want me here. I don't want to be here. I don't feel encouraged. But I have seen that with other students and peers like myself, and I think that has really stood out the most to me. So I haven't really had that difficulty. Plus I have grandparents who are super involved, and that also helps. You get it from school and you have it from home, so you have a two-bond cord helping you to push forward.
Let's talk a little bit about that parental involvement that Brianna's talking about, because clearly that's really critical. Many of the parents that I talk to just literally physically cannot do it, and then there's a whole other set, if you're looking at uninvolved parents, who feel like they just cannot understand how to navigate the system. It's very complicated. What advice do you give them?
Again, and I mentioned earlier, every family dynamic is different, and you cannot hold every family to the exact same standard. It's not reasonable. The key, though, is to look, if you cannot, schools can't be, it's not dry cleaning. You can't just drop the kids off in the morning and then ask what time to pick them up in the afternoon and assume that everything that needed to happen happened, and the child knows what they need to do if they have any homework, and you bring them back in the next day. It's got to be a little more hands-on. And so what you do is you can reach out to the school, go directly to the school. You make the time. You ask if you can go after hours. You ask if you can go on the weekends. You ask the school what opportunities or what programs they might have in place, or how you might help them describe a situation so they can develop a program where you could be more either involved. You reach out to family, you reach out to neighbors. It's too important to just say that I'm too busy. I get it, food's got to be on the table, people have to go to work, but education is, your child is going to go through that same scenario when they have their own family of they're too busy, if we don't educate them so that they can get, so that they have a different life when they grow up. So I would suggest you get involved with the school. You ask what opportunities there are currently or what opportunities could be developed for support. Go to the public library, see what sort of tutoring programs they might have. Go to the park district, see what sort of activities. They have a lot of different programs around learning. It's not just that physical activity, even though there's nothing wrong with that. But look to see what the alternatives are if you can't be that main person to be involved to support.
I think schools also have a responsibility to make sure that their doors are open and welcoming to parents, so that I've seen examples where parents feel intimidated by the school, by the administrators, by the teachers. And I think it's extremely important that schools provide a welcoming atmosphere for parents, because parents are the first teachers of their children. They often have insights into their children that we may not have, and I think we have to be open to listening to them. We also have to provide opportunities for them to be involved. One of the things that we've done with my district this year to try to increase parental involvement was during registration, we had one of our staff members who has also been a parent and a community member went around during registration with a little wagon, balloons, and a little brochure about these are the kinds of things that you can do within our school to help us out, things that you can do to volunteer, opportunities that are coming down the line, share your career, come and read to a classroom. And the parents filled it out. We had little giveaways for them, prizes and so forth. And we were able to get, at registration, over 300 parents to sign up for volunteering throughout the year. We have, if they have an email address or a telephone number, we created a listserv so that we can continue to invite those people and engage them in the schools. That's one level of engagement of parents. The other is to educate them about what's coming down the pike with math or with reading. Have family nights where they're invited to come in. Children come in their pajamas. Lots of schools are doing these kinds of things. They sit down, they read. We've actually had some of our teachers who have had math education nights for parents where the parents actually come and learn about what their child is doing in math, because math seemed to be an area where parents were kind of frustrated in helping with homework because sometimes they didn't understand the concepts that were being taught. So we're actually teaching the parents those concepts so that they can better help their children at home, because that's another level of parental involvement that we need to make sure we're addressing with our families.
Do you feel your parents are involved? I mean, how would you describe it?
It's always a struggle. It's always a struggle. We always say that we get the best parent turnout on band concert nights. I mean, it's packed. Or graduation. Everyone shows up for that. But if we can use those opportunities then to let people know what other types of things they can do to engage them, or maybe we can give some messages out on those evenings, then we're communicating with them perhaps in a different way. We're also trying to use more technology in terms of we're exploring texting parents and emailing them with a listserv when we have to make announcements to encourage them to come in. It's marketing your school, just the way they market a product, and you have to give that message over and over again. It's not a one-time thing. To get the level of engagement of parents that you really need. And there are times that we may not necessarily see them present, but if I've got a parent who has set up a homework space at home for their child and are monitoring that they're doing their homework and can communicate that with back with the staff, I consider that parental involvement also.
I was just going to say, I think it starts with, and my son started at the school, there's pre-kindergarten, so I started at age 3. I think it starts with opening their backpack, and I think in some schools, it works for the school for the doors to be wide open and parents to come in and out, and for some schools, for different reasons, that might not be the ideal setup, and there are more creative ways in the afternoons and evenings to involve parents. But I think it really, as a parent, starts with getting the letter out that comes from the school, filling out the form right away and sending it to the school so the school doesn't have to take their time on things like that, and getting involved with knowing exactly what's going on and figuring out what you can do to help your kid at home, and then reading books and doing all of those things.
From the parental side of it, as a parent, I remember years ago, and now they've gotten much better, but people would book field trips and all those things literally like 1 week out. And I'm like, I travel all the time. If you want, and it would just by talking about that sort of, if you want me to go, a month's notice would be helpful, because I was becoming the only mom who wasn't involved in sort of a field trip here and there. Right. Can you be successful without community involvement? No.
I mean, it depends on what successful is. I mean, unfortunately, there's still some schools out there that deem success is, well, how many students did I have show up today, or what was my average attendance? But that can't be the baseline for success.
It certainly helps, and all the statistics tell us that it really does enhance and the children who are most successful, there's a correlation with their involvement. But I'm going to tell you what, as a young educator, my mother was in education also for over almost 30 years. And I remember arguing with her about the fact that, well, I can't do anything if the parents aren't involved. And what she told me in her wisdom was, even if the parents are not involved, it is still your responsibility to educate those children and to find a way to do it. So absolutely, I strongly encourage parental involvement. I believe that it really enhances and helps our children to move forward at a much faster rate and move to higher rates. But if you're in a situation where you don't have that parental involvement, it may not be the actual biological parent, but you find someone to mentor that child. That child, you talked about always feeling successful because people were encouraging to you and believed in you. If it's not the parent, you find somebody else to provide that support for that child.
So talk to me about that. And tell me about a time when you were challenged and how you overcame it.
Well, when I started in high school, I knew that I struggled with math. So that wasn't brand new news to me. But I got a math teacher who was also my academic advisor, has been since I've been in high school, the same math teacher and academic advisor, that really understood that, I wasn't as quick with understanding formulas and concepts, so I moved a little slower because I felt like, not really one of my strongest subjects. But I had a teacher that was very engaged in my learning style and teaching me. And there were others in the class with similar circumstances. And even if they went home, they couldn't get the help, they asked other peers, they couldn't get the help, they knew that they could get the help from the teacher. They knew that she would be there after lunch, she would be there during advisory, she would be there after school in the mornings. The teacher who, here, call me. If you need help with this, if you need help with your homework, call me. I will help you. See, that's really what it comes down to. If you don't have parental involvement, you need to have involvement from somewhere else. Considering it's involving academics, teachers come first. So, you sit in class and you're like, man, I really don't understand this. I'm really hoping my teacher can help me. And if they do that, you feel a little better about it. You gain just a little more confidence. And gradually that builds up. And who knows, that may even rub off on the parents. Well, hey, maybe I can step in. I can do a little something here.
In New York City, we have an out-and-out charter versus public school war. I think it's fair to say. People are at each other. And sometimes it's because you have a building that's shared. And so literally I have seen classes or schools or classrooms where public school kids will walk by the room where they've all gotten laptops because it's a great charter school, and they climb the 2 more flights up and go to their public school classroom, and the kids completely don't really understand the nuance between schools. Is that a similar thing here? And how are you dealing with that?
I believe there's absolutely the conversation, and that's putting it politely, between charter
war
schools
is putting
and
it politely.
Well, it is. I mean, there's as a parent. So to go back, my oldest is 10, and before we had children, we had talked about what we wanted to do as far as education. We have we're fortunate enough to have the ability to send our children to private school, but that wasn't. We wanted them to be a product. We wanted to involve them with more in the community. And I'm sorry. We're proud Chicagoans. We grew up in the Chicago public school system. My wife did. I did in high school, and we wanted to be raise our family through that. And we also pay property taxes. I mean, that's part of I'm kind of double paying if I go the other route. When we were accepted into the charter school, which is a lotto system, which can be another conversation, I think. We had alternatives, but we went with this, and it was very different than how I was raised or how my wife was brought up in school, but it looked different. It looked like they were going in a direction that that could benefit a child's education. But we took a lot of heat. We have family who we have friends who are teachers. We have other neighbors who go to private school and so on, and they looked at the program and they heard what we were talking about, and they said, well, that's just taking money out of this program. If we had the funds that are used in the charter school and we just had them in the public school, well, then we could fix all the problems in the public school. And the argument from my perspective was, well, you've had decades, and now you've got this charter program, and there's not many of them, but some of them they're taking a different approach to education. We have to allow it to go the course to see how it ultimately plays out before we just say that's not, that can't be the answer. Take money or take resources out of here and try something different over there. This whole, we have to fix it all at one time over, all as a city. And so that argument continues. And I think it's unfortunate.
What can people learn from, because I think ultimately in the conversations that I've been involved in have been, but the number of charter schools is so small that, how do you handle the 97, 95, whatever it is, % of kids who are in public school? Like, what can people learn from your charter school that literally, if you look at that as a petri dish of experiments, that can be applied to make all the schools better? Because if we agree, as I started, we're really rooting for every student, right? I mean, really, there's nobody who's rooting against some student to succeed. What can they learn from that experience that you could apply to public school? And you really either...
I was CPS, Chicago Public Schools, public school, then charter, and now back in Chicago Public Schools. I left Chicago Public Schools in 2003 because I was really excited by the level of rigor and the instruction that was going on in the University of Chicago Charter School that I moved to for 7 years. And there was a longer day, there was recess, there were all of these things that Chicago Public Schools are now moving in that direction. And I think there was a little bit less, there was less policy and bureaucracy and pressure around some of the test score, just that language. And there was more room to teach in a way that, the school felt was really good for kids. I think now that I'm back in Chicago Public Schools, that's really starting to happen in Chicago Public Schools as well. And there are quite a few really good schools. I think a lot of the neighborhood schools, there are some wonderful neighborhood schools, and then there's some neighborhood schools that we know are struggling. And so I think it's looking at what makes good instruction, what makes good sense for kids. Earlier we were talking about healthy lunches and children being healthy and being able to be healthy in school. All of those things are so important. I mean, you're talking about 5-year-olds, you're talking about 14-year-olds. I think looking at having good discussions in class and getting the kids to read and being healthy because they're getting a good meal in a recess.
Yeah, some of it's just common sense, but it's just because of the bureaucracy or because it's the way we've always done it or because the system is programmed that way, we don't change it. I mean, there's a hot conversation in Chicago right now about extending the school day. And I cannot, as a parent, understand how that is difficult to understand. I have friends whose children get out of school at 1:45 in the afternoon. Now, I know they have jobs, and they're not getting home until 5, 6, sometimes later. There's a gap there. What good thing is afforded that child? If not, it doesn't have to be classwork. It doesn't, my children, the school they go to is a extended day school. So they start at 8:30 with yoga. They're in class before 9. They have recess every single day, and they have PE every day. How can they do that? They're not taking away from their educational experience because they're there till 4 o'clock. So they've used that time, that extended day. It's not just sit down, cross your leg, put your hands on the desk. It doesn't have to be that. It can be, there's other opportunities to fill that time where they're not out and about.
Right, and many of those conversations, in all fairness, involve contracts, involve unions, involve pay scale. My mom was a teacher for many, many years, so I've been on the other end of those, conversations for a long time. What has your public school been able to learn, do you think, and apply? I mean, you've had some really great success, and you continue to improve. Where has that come from?
Well, I think that parents choose charter schools because they are looking for more choice and more diversity in terms of what is offered to their children. And I think that one of the things that more if I can call them traditional public schools need to look at is what is it that parents are looking for? What is it that the community is looking for that we need to be able to provide for our children within our organization? And does it need to change? Do we need to look at how we structure our day? Do we need to look at the kinds of offerings that we have for children or the kind of instruction that takes place within there? Because there are different charter schools for different for different focus.
So you think you stealing, if you will, that flexibility, that sort of mindset of change is okay, would be a good place to start.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think that education has to address the needs of our children today, not 30 years ago or 40 years ago. And so that means that it's going to look different. I don't remember who told me this, and I've used this recently, but they were saying that if the signers of the Declaration of Independence came back, one of the few things that they would recognize in terms of organizations that still exists is schools, because primarily they haven't changed that much since in that period of time. And so that's a concern. That's a concern.
And that would be a bad thing. So before I open it up to questions from the audience, I know you guys want to weigh in. I'm going to just ask about what the community needs to do. You know, what's the conversation that the community needs to be having? I remember my mom was a teacher in my public high school in Long Island, which was an affluent public high school, and then a teacher at a public high school in Harlem, New York. And even though we were all in the public school system, you couldn't have had, a bigger difference in what the opportunity was. The opportunity that I had as a public school student in America and the opportunity that a public school student in Harlem at that time was having were night and day. What's the conversation we have to be having in this country that will really bring sort of an end to the fighting, when again, the goal is the same? We're all trying to get there with everybody.
The goal. State the goal first. If every sentence, every conversation, every one of these forums starts with what's best for the student, if that was the focus, if that was the first thing that was mentioned before anything else, we'd cut through some of the nonsense. And you would be, because I have heard some of the arguments, and it's administration, it's union, it's charter school, it's public school, but if you said, well, what's best for the student, and then followed it with whatever your argument is, halfway through your statement, you would realize that what I'm about to say is ridiculous. Is absolutely ridiculous, and you'd stop yourself. And other times you're saying, hey, I'm on track because what's good for the student is the goal, and what I'm about to say ties to that exactly. And if that's how the conversation started, ultimately that's how the conversation should stop.
And I think there's definitely room for growth in the way in which our country, we're talking about education a lot, but I don't know that I'm hoping we're making the shift of really valuing it more, and that collectively as a society realizing that this is important. I went to Northwestern and I had someone say to me, why are you going to Northwestern if you only want to be a teacher? And it just stuck with me, and I stayed at Northwestern for another year, and I got a master's, and and I'm in this field because I believe in it, but I also do believe it is intellectual work. In order to teach well, in order to really commit yourself to raising your children in a school and being an educator, it's important that we all put resources into it and value it in the way we talk about it and advocate for all of our children.
I think too much time is spent pointing a finger. And what kind of example is that for our students? Well, my school is better because this, or this is better, or this is not better. It takes away time from finding solutions to these problems. Many of these problems that we have today, we had 10 years ago. They've just progressed.
When you were 8.
Basically.
I just want to travel with you forever. I want to bring you with me to everything forever from now on. So let's open it up to questions. J.R. Kerr is right back here. He's a Chicago native and also has kids in the system as well. So J.R., why don't you, as I see if, we have an email as well. So why don't you start with a question from the audience, and then I'll also answer our email questions.
Questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Tell us your name and where you're located in the city, and then your question.
My name is Ellen. I'm from Inglewood. Okay. I'm representing Mal Davis. They're the first engineering school in West Inglewood. And you talked about the first Lego League. My granddaughter is a group of children that came out of West Inglewood that took second in the region tournament, and then they went on to state level the first year, 33rd place in 66 teams. I was there every day supporting my granddaughter, making sure she felt good about herself. And parents have to really understand the environment. Everybody has to be involved, especially for children who are in low-income areas. It's our problem. It's everybody's problem, because these young people turn up to be angry adults. And these young people need that extra love from other people. And I am a neighborhood child. I was raised by a community.
So let me ask a question onto that, which is a great, I think, sentence. And yet, you know, I was talking about my mom being a teacher. One day my mom said to me that one of her students said to her, I didn't do my homework. In my mom's class, she was a really hardcore teacher. You got a 0. And she said, and then the student said, my mom's on a crack binge. And I just didn't, you know, I had to take care and help feed my brothers and sisters, right? And she was like, coming from my suburban public school, was kind of like, I don't know what to do. And we had a long conversation about it, and then she sort of allowed the student to make up the work to get the grade. But to add on to what you're saying, how fabulous for your granddaughter. And there are some people whose parents just cannot do it. Like they physically will never, and especially if you're talking in urban environments where there's high poverty, that poverty brings a lot of other problems and issues where you're just not going to get that kind of, how do you solve that?
There's a neighbor, there's a family member, there's a cousin, there's somebody who sees that same situation. That person, although it's not your child, has to take it upon themselves. It can start as simple as telling the child to do good today. Have a good day. What kind of day are you going to have? Encourage, just an encouraging word out the door is something. It's better than nothing. I think we said it earlier. Every dynamic is different, but it doesn't mean that somebody doesn't see that the dynamic is different and couldn't step in, offer, or just a word of just a kind word to the kid on the way to school. Tell them it's important, right?
Right, and that's a real issue in Chicago. We have a lot of students, teenagers, children here who don't have that support at home. West Inglewood, a lot of children come out of there, teenagers, I have classmates, and they don't feel that support in that community or at home. So coming to school, they need that extra support. Well, how are you today? How are you feeling? They need that smile to brighten their day. Just that little thing could make a whole lot of difference, and I think we really need to keep that in mind, especially considering all the things that come with it. Chicago has had a rather violent reputation that has built up over the years. You have issues with gang violence and teenagers getting shot and all of this other craziness that really affects students because they get less inclined to walk out their door and go to school.
JR?
Yes, Maria has a comment.
Yes, just speaking to what who can help these kids if their parents are not available. I know we expect a lot of our teachers today, but I think teachers are just part of the equation to all of this. But sometimes it's also up to our teachers. Our teachers spend 8 hours a day or thereabouts with the students. Sometimes they have a clue as to students who may be having issues whose parents are not part of that. And sometimes it's up to the teacher to kind of reach out also to the administration and say, hey, I have a student, and getting them the help that they need. At our school, I see the socioeconomic makeup of the school, and you have a wide gap, and it exists in every school. You have parents who are very much into supporting their children, and you have families who just can't, and sometimes you just have to advocate for those children.
Teachers tell me though, and maybe Michelle, you can jump in on this, they tell me they feel attacked. I mean, they say that they really feel like and when we're on my Twitter feed, the sort of backlash, the anger is palpable. They feel attacked, and they are sometimes attacking back, and you're like, wow, this is a really angry and hostile environment, and you read like, wow, you're a 4th grade teacher, what do you do?
You have to go in.
I don't want to, because I do believe schools have an important role, and I said that before, and this comes up in the community, because there are actually three communities that my district serves. What's wrong with the young people? And everyone sort of turns to the schools. But what I want to emphasize is it is a community issue. It's not just schools. It's the culture of the community, providing those supports for students once the day ends. What are your park districts doing? What are your community centers doing? What are your churches doing? They should be also providing those kinds of outlets for children. They should be providing mentors for them, mentors in the community, so that there needs to be a greater outreach. And it really has to, you have to connect the schools, the community, all of the services, organizations that are out there in order to support, particularly in an urban environment.
Well, it just, because it continues. If you don't, it's just self-fulfilling prophecy. So you're not, if you don't afford that, then you have that violence and that anger and that frustration that you said is so prevalent. It's, you have to choose, what's the priority, and there's work to be done. I mean, it's going to take a lot of people, it's going to take a lot of hard work, but it doesn't mean we don't do it. And I would say, as far as some of the teachers feeling attacked, unfortunately, today's day and age, maybe that's just the hazard of the job. But if no. Wait, does it exist? Does it exist? If it exists,
hold on one second. I'm going to stop you there. So, who's one of my absolutely nots? Okay, Mr. Absolutely Not, stand up, because I have a hard time seeing you. Just explain what you mean, and I'm asking because I don't really understand what you mean by you're absolutely not.
Well, first of all, my name is Matthew Myers, and I teach high school biology on the north side of Chicago. In a high school, to give you guys a little bit of background, in a high school that has 95% low-income students that are on free and reduced lunch. Also, we're one of the most ethnically diverse students in Illinois, much less the country. I hear over 25 languages spoke every day. I work regularly 12 and 14-hour days to reach my students. And to say that I'm not putting in enough effort, or to say that I need to do more or care more, is downright insulting, to be honest.
So let me stop you there. Hold on. I'll moderate, because what he said was attacks are part of the job. He didn't say your 14-hour day is not enough. So I think that, I get what you're saying is that, and again, on my Twitter feed, we get a lot of that, right? Someone's saying teachers need to blah, 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 and you're saying I'm working a 14-hour day. So do you think when you say attacks are part of the job, that teachers need to face a new reality and just not care about that?
No. I'm just saying that we have to acknowledge that, unfortunately, that does happen today. It's not right, it's not good, but it doesn't mean you don't keep trying. You do. You keep coming back to work and you keep trying. And you can't, as I would hope as a teacher, you wouldn't just shut down because of it. And it sounds like you haven't. You keep plugging, you keep doing it, you keep 14 hours, that's more than most jobs. And you're doing what you have to. What I'm saying is if the argument is, well, I don't engage because I know I'm just going to get beat down by the parent, then that's not good. I would say that's not helping the student, if that's how the conversation starts.
I think as a parent too, I mean, so my son started as a 3-year-old, and he has a lot of needs, and we have definitely had to do a lot to figure out whether or not school was the right move for him at the time, and we decided to go for it. And it was hard. And driving from my school to pick him up every day, I would pray, please let him be wearing the same pants. Please let him not have wet his pants. Please let the day have been okay. And every day for a long time, please, I got really, I got bad news often, and not just about his pants, but just about his day. And coming in as a parent, I think I had to be very aware of, I'm assuming positive intent from the teacher. Like, I'm going to hear what she has to say, and I am going to have her back, because it is a hard job. She has 30, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in front of her. It's a hard job. And when I got to a point where there was maybe something I heard that I disagreed with, then you have a conversation. I'm not saying to not advocate for your child, but I think it's really important for me to assume positive intent, because the schools are really there working hard for our children in most cases.
Our pre-K teacher said to me, I won't believe everything she says about you, and you shouldn't believe everything she says about me. And I thought that was a very good way to kind of move forward every day. We have another question from the audience. I think we have time. Maybe we can squeeze in 2 more questions if we keep our answers a little bit tight. Yeah, are we fine for time that way?
Sejal. Just a quick comment about encouragement. So we all agree encouragement's really important. And if, parents can't do it, a neighbor should do it. And if a neighbor can't do it, then teachers should do it. But who encourages teachers?
That's a great question. And are you raising your hand because you have an answer, or are you raising? She does. So we're going to give you our final question of the day. Our young lady in the yellow jacket. I love this self-answering audience. That's helpful to us.
Denise Fields.
This is Denise Fields.
Good morning, everyone. I am Denise Fields, the proud new principal of the Young Women's Leadership Charter School. And it is, to answer the question, the last statement, it is our job as the administrators to keep the teachers supported and making them feel encouraged. It is my job to continue to encourage my young ladies every day. I know the community involvement is important, but if it's not there, which in many cases it won't be, that does not change what I'm supposed to do every single day. We are a young woman's leadership charter school. Every day we start with a leadership quote of the day for the students as well as for the staff. At the end, I'm tired because urban education is exhausting, but the next morning I'm rejuvenated because I signed up for it. Education is passion, and if you are not passionate about what you do as an educator, you should work at the gas station maybe, not in a school. So I hope that answered your question.
And I'm going to ask, and maybe, will you stand one more time? I know you did my introduction, but I'm curious to know, corporations, because ultimately, right, your job is to educate people to go work at Microsoft or do other jobs. What should the role of a corporation be in terms of supporting teachers, advocating for kids? I mean, where do you see it?
Well, I have both a personal and professional view, and I think they actually come together very closely at Microsoft. I mean, I just simply believe that a fantastic education is a right of every individual in this country, and really the world, but let's take care of our country. And it just makes me nuts when we have all these kinds of challenges. So from a Microsoft perspective, the corporate speak is that we want to hire well-educated, diverse young people from the communities in which we work and live. But we have jobs that go unfilled because we can't find the skills here because there's an educational gap. And everybody's nodding their heads, so everybody understands that. So the role of a company like Microsoft is to enable programs like this, like many others, especially in the STEM field. I am so thrilled that you're going to go into engineering.
She's mine.
No, you're mine. You're mine. You're mine. We want you.
I actually think you might need to fight the principal for her.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we got to let her.
We'll work it out later.
Graduate. But the idea, especially the science, technology, engineering, and math, it's about local level. It's about the regional level, but it's also global competitiveness. I mean, it's getting America back on track. It's making sure we've got the smart young people who have the job skills and the job opportunities to do the things that they want to do.
So let me interrupt you there.
So we need to enable that as a corporation.
And how do you deal with the teacher part, right? Because I hear in your voice, obviously you love what you do, and I'm sure you're not making more than $1.5 million a year as a teacher. What's the teacher part of that? Because I sometimes feel that people, and my mom, again, was happy to toil for 12, 14 hours a day, right? Because ultimately, you're in it for the passion. But you do start feeling a little worn down when you feel like everyone around you doesn't really respect what you're trying to do. And you want to go back tomorrow for another 14-hour day, but wouldn't it be nice if someone just sort of said, wow, we appreciate the fact that you're killing yourself. We're not paying you more, but we appreciate the fact that you're paying yourself.
And again, I'll speak to Microsoft, that's what I know the best, but from a teacher perspective, corporations need to provide you the right kind of tools and resources that you need, okay? Now it's very different. If it's craft, it's different from what a Microsoft. Obviously, our focus is digital literacy, 21st century skills, technology in the classroom. We run innovative educator forums throughout the world, actually. We run them all over the U.S. Our next one's going to be in Dallas in December. And to honor and celebrate what teachers do. So I think it's very, depending on your company, whether large or small, it's very, very different. If you're a small or mid-sized company or an entrepreneurial company, come visit the classroom. Show young ladies like this the possibility of what it's like to start your own business, so that you have the skills, the business side of what it takes, to have a payroll, hire people, know all those types of soft skills. So I mean, it's a community. It's exactly what you said. It's getting all these resources together, and it starts with collaboration, communication at a very local level, like this type of meeting. So I think a lot of those resources, I can meet with you afterwards, are available online, free, downloadable, you know. But other companies, whether small, medium, or large, I think should just bring what they're best at, because everybody's looking for the talent. I mean, this is what we want. We want this kind of talent. And
Great.
That's what we need to be successful.
Shelley, I thank you because I totally put you on the spot by calling you. And we are out of time. So I want to thank our panelists. You guys are amazing, and our audience as well. We really appreciate those questions. Thank you. Put your head up.
Hi. I'm Wendy DeBow at the United Way, and I want to thank everyone for being here with us this morning. Of course, I want to thank Soledad for flying in from New York this morning to do this for us, and I want to thank all of our panelists, but mostly I really want to thank all of you for joining us here today. You all may know or not know United Way, actually, largest private funder of human services here in Chicagoland, across the country. Education is a big issue for us. In fact, we announced a 10-year strategy, a vision called Live United 2020, and education, finding the right resources for our kids to succeed, is the foundation of it. I'll tell you about two things we're working on because it really supports everything that was discussed here today. And what I really want to say is that United Way, the reason we have partnered with panelists, with all of you here today, and with Microsoft, I want to thank Shelley for everything that Microsoft has done to host this event, are really looking at the community solutions for education, right? That was brought up a couple of times today, and it's part of what we see in our vision. How do we support kids? How do we support parents? How do we support teachers, administrators to do the right things in our educational system, make the right kind of change, and pull it together through the community? And so as part of our vision, we've announced that we want to work on getting 50,000 kids ready to succeed in 9th grade. That's the key place. I see some very positive reaction over there. The key place where kids either stay on track or fall off for high school graduation. That's why we're focusing on 9th grade. Part of what we're doing is supporting community school resources, the social services inside of schools that help lengthen the school day, involve parents in schools, bring the community into schools, and help kids with all the sorts of things they need on the academic front and social service front to stay on track and succeed in school. We're doing that in middle schools, about 80 middle schools around the region. We're also focusing on an early childhood strategy. How do we get kids ready for kindergarten? Because that's kids and parents ready for kindergarten. That's essential to get kids started in the right way. And we know the research shows that the best way to do that actually is through very high quality preschool resources in communities. So we are actually funding the expansion of high quality preschool resources in low income communities, as well as home visitation programs for parents that are having a hard time supporting their kids to find their way to preschool, some of the things we talked about today. So just wanted to share a little bit why United Way is hosting this in partnership with Microsoft, with Chicago Public Schools, and with all of you here today. And on that note, we know the vision that we have for kids succeeding in school, staying on track, isn't going to happen unless we have all the right community partnerships, something that we talked about today. And on that note, I want to introduce a very special person here today. United Way has recently brought in to help us, hired a director of community engagement. He's here. I want to bring him up. He'd like to say a few words because this is the chance to talk about the community piece. How does the community come together to do this? He's over there. His name is Adam Alonso, and he joins United Way. He's formerly the head of Corazon Community Services in Cicero, and he's going to share a little bit about what we're thinking. Adam.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm not someone who prepares remarks, but I want to, of course, acknowledge all the great things that were set up here and certainly the questions in the audience. I've been in the human services field for almost 20 years, which makes me feel really old. And 16 of those were spent specifically working with children and youth. And one of the things I want to share is that what we know is that there are three key things that all young people need to be successful in education, in their communities, and certainly in the future. Number one is a sense of identity. Who are they? What do they believe in? A sense of belonging. Where do they fit in into their families, into their communities? and a sense of power. What decisions can they make for themselves, whether it's what they want to wear, who they want to be friends with. Those three things are supported and grown first from families, second community, and third in school. So the success of this country and our young people depends on those three key things being met at all levels. And so when I say it takes a village, it really does. Key things and how those are met is important for all of us to understand. So my role here at United Way is to be back on the front line, whence I came, to really understand dynamics, what's going on in communities, and bring that back to United Way to say, you know what, we need to really look at this and how can we support as an agency that gives, that cares, that mobilizes resources to plug those into where the gaps that are missing in these communities. So I hope to do my best, pour in all that I know, and we hope to see some changes here, certainly in the near future. And supporting To Live United and this vision for 2020, I'm excited to be asked to join this team and honored to be able to serve in community. So thank you all.
Okay, so before we're going to conclude, I just want to invite you all to be part of this mobilization that we're working on. And I have two public service announcements. The first is, please check out our website. That's liveunitedchicago2020.org. And then also, Jamiko held up those information cards, and we really want you to fill those out so we get some really good feedback from today, and CPS gets some really good feedback today, and the town hall does what it should do, which is really get the communication going. So thanks for coming.